The problem in the north is that we don't actually have proper statistics to reflect what food insecurity looks like in the Yukon, especially in the north. In order to get funding and to speak the government's language, we need to use statistics, but the statistics don't exist, and so it feels like an impossible battle. We've been using the Food Sovereignty Project as a way to promote and support resilience for White River First Nation by localizing a food system and giving the power back to the people to have control over their own food system has been a dignifying experience, especially with youth. It's so important to get youth excited about being a part of their community through food.
Hi, welcome back. Welcome back to our podcast, The Zero Hunger Project. And I'm your host, Suman.
I'm Stacia.
And today we are going to talk about this topic from soil to stove, building food sovereignty in Yukon. And anybody who's listening to this podcast or watching us, if you don't know where Yukon is, look it up in the map of Canada. It's a beautiful territory. It's with amazing people, and look up some videos that is from there.
Mhm.
But who do we have to speak about
Well,
this?
one of those amazing Yukon people, I have to find out what somebody from the Yukon is called. Maybe Meesha will tell us, is Meesha Wittkopf. Meesha started the Beaver Creek Food Sovereignty Project in 2023, where she was mentored by local food sovereignty experts, elders, and the community. With an academic and personal interest in how climate change impacts Northern health, her work with the White River First Nation exploded into a dynamic position in supporting rural and remote communities in food sovereignty initiatives. As the rural coordinator with the Yukon Food Security Network, Meesha's passion for celebrating rural communities is a key to her work. Her commitment to youth leadership in community based food initiatives is inspired by the energy young people bring to their local food systems. She is the founder of the Youth Coalition for Food Security North Project, a pan Northern youth network of young leaders leading food sovereignty and security initiatives across Northern Canada. Meesha works on the WRFN Food Sovereignty Project, which I'd like to find out what that stands for, is based in Marsh Lake, Yukon. Her current positions are the rural coordinator with the Yukon Food Security Network and the founder for Youth Coalition for Food Security North. We're very happy to have Meesha here on her inaugural podcast. This is her first podcast ever.
That's
very exciting.
exciting.
Hi,
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
we're very happy to have you.
So, Misha, before we even I jump into questions, I really want to know, do you want to tell us a little bit about Yukon and how things are up there? Where is it in the world map? And
I want to
about
also
the
know
people.
what a person from the Yukon is called.
Yeah, that was gonna be my first question that I answered. So there's a whole thing here. So we're all Yukoners, but there's born and raised Yukoners, and then for like people like myself, I'm a non-Indigenous settler. So I've been here in the Yukon for about 6 years, and once you've made your first winter up here, you're considered a sourdough.
Sourdough?
Yeah, a sourdough.
Wow, I love that. It's amazing.
So but my biggest like thing is that I've been told by born and raised Yukoners that I give born and raised Yukoner energy, and that's the best compliment I think I've gotten. So yeah.
Okay, so hold on for a second. Uh, in Newfoundland, once you kiss the cod,
Yes.
it's called your screeched
Screeched in,
in
yeah.
honorary Newfoundlander.
Yeah.
So here you're called sourdough after you spend the winter.
Yes.
Wow.
But she's
I love it.
she's a sourdough with Yukoner energy.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. People think I'm actually like a Yukoner, and
Love that. I know somebody who is a legit Yukoner, and so I'm going to say to her, I know what a sourdough is now.
yeah,
you
exactly.
might even be able to say, "Hey, I know Meesha Wittkopf," and they might know me because there's only two Mishas up here.
And I'm speaking to two Mishas today.
Oh, that's hilarious.
That's hilarious. So, tell me a little bit about Yukon overall and overall food security situation in Yukon.
Yeah. Well, okay. The Yukon is a big place. There are very many different microclimates, which really impacts food security and food systems. But if out of the 13 First Nations, three of them are unsigned, and I will talk about that in like the first question.
Mhm.
I want to know what that.
Yeah, I'll explain it. But yeah, so just because like we have one like urban city, which is about, I want to say it's about closer to 70,000 people, which is where like 90% of the Yukon's population lives. But and then we have all of these other rural communities, and down south you would definitely consider them remote, but technically rural and remote up here is remote is considered a fly-in community, and rural is like accessible by road. And I will also get into this, but yeah, they're very spread out throughout. So Old Crow is our remote community, and the rest are rural.
And what is the name of the big city that has 90,000 people? Or
Seven.
Whitehorse.
seven?
Whitehorse.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I know that,
Yeah.
but there are other people who don't.
And if it's helpful, one thing that we consider, we don't call it only Yukon territory, we call it the Yukon.
I didn't know that.
There you go.
Wow.
Yeah, and if you ever visit up here, you'll get brownie points if you call it the Yukon, because as soon as I even mentioned to my friends that there was like something that you guys had mentioned, something Yukon, and they were like, "Oh, but it's the Yukon." So it's very much a culture.
But it's interesting because in New Brunswick, there's a very famous salmon fishing river in the Miramichi. It's called the Miramichi River,
Yeah.
but if you're from there, you're from the Miramichi.
Miramichi.
So there are lots of different parts of Canada where you got to slap a the in
Okay,
front
I'm
of
going
it.
to restart this. From soil to stove, building food sovereignty in the Yukon.
So-
Yeah, that will be.
Love it. Love it.
Feedback from a sourdough.
Yeah. No, this is amazing. So I really enjoyed this because I had no idea.
No.
Now, talking about food security, and we'll get into a detailed question, but how is the food security in the Yukon, and what's happening there?
Yeah, so especially since the pandemic, it's gotten worse. Federally speaking, and this is one of actually our calls to action to the federal government and the territorial government right now under the Yukon Food Security Network. Jordan's principal funding has gotten cut for the rural nutrition program. So already the food bank statistics are increasing over like since the pandemic, but even more so, especially like urgently now. Food systems are really chaotic, and kids don't have access to breakfast and lunch programs in the school. So I would say it's pretty chaotic right now, and we're probably at the worst we've been in a very long time. Like I said, I've only been here for 6 years, but um, it's really problematic.
We talked to somebody from Nunavut a little while ago, and they were talking about how their 60 to 80% of their population is experiencing some sort of food insecurity. And it sounds to me like it's that or worse, maybe.
Yeah, and I'm happy to give you guys some stats because I definitely.
I think people need to hear them.
So, Misha, when I'm looking online, I see that around 20% of kids in Yukon, that is 1 in 5, are suffering from food insecurity or living in food insecure household, not having enough food to eat. Is that an old data or that is a current data? Do you have any idea?
So it's like it is a little bit of both in a way, but the problem is in the north is that we don't actually have proper statistics to reflect what food insecurity looks like in at least like in the Yukon for sure, especially in the north. So I actually went to a conference last year, and they had this big map about showing the statistics from food, what food insecurity looks like in Canada, and there was no statistics showing anything in the north. So I kind of got upset, and I was like, how can we be part of the conversation if we don't have any numbers that represent what is going on up here? And part of the reason why we don't have those numbers is because it's done through Stats Canada, which is already a colonial way of like getting data and information. And so they don't have anybody coming up here into the communities to doing like a proper consultation with people and asking them, like it's just it's and nobody wants to talk to the government because they've been really impacted by the government in negative ways. So we don't have ways of representing how like food insecure households are. So we rely heavily on food bank stats, which emergency food doesn't give a very like food security is such a much larger picture, like food security is about access to nutritional food, and reliable access to nutritional food. So when we're only using the food bank stats, which is really like is in Whitehorse, and there's all these other communities that are like 500 kilometers away, they can't really like it's kind of a very broken system of like being able to represent of what is actually happening in the communities.
Yeah, it's interesting because nationally, we say that less than 30% people who are food insecure actually goes to food banks.
Yeah.
Isn't that such an interesting um, fact to shed light on about how problematic this all really is? I mean, the North can be used as a metaphor for, depending on who you ask, how broken the system is or how efficient the system is actually designed and is working. But the fact that you can't get any governmental support to help with food insecurity because nobody in the government will go up and support the people that are insecure to begin with is sort of
So I think
a
you're jumping ahead here.
okay.
Getting support from the government is one thing. The
Yeah.
government is not even ready to go and actually measure the problem.
That's what I
That's the
mean, though. Like,
first issue.
the whole thing is so deeply flawed, and
Exactly.
it's sort of like, do you remember those things when we were kids and you'd stick your fingers in both ends of it and then pull it and it would lock your fingers in? It feels like that.
Yeah.
It feels like a finger trap where it's like, okay, it's a it's a, what is that, a problem inside of an enigma inside of a whatever that quote was from the movie, but it's how do you deal with that, Misha? Like how do you overcome the thing that's supposed to be helping you is the thing that's hurting you the most? Like how do you deal with that?
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, you take it, it's so impossible to take it step by step sometimes because they are so interlinked, these problems. And yeah, it's like how do we communicate, like especially when in order to get funding and to speak the government's language, we need to use statistics, but the statistics don't exist. And like if you look at the statistics versus like the north versus the south, if they're actually using that methodology, then it actually looks like we're more food secure up here, which is so untrue. And so it's like an impossible, it feels like an impossible battle.
And anybody who understands even a little bit of how Canadian food insecurity works,
Mhm.
I just Googled and said, what is the food insecurity percentage in Yukon? And guess what the number came? 17%,
Yeah.
which is such a crock or
It's a
such
it's
bull.
a
I
it's a
have a lot of I was just gonna say that, but I'm like, I don't know if I can swear on here because I
yeah.
It's certain
Yeah.
because it's by any chance it cannot be as low as 17%. That is a joke.
and then the government has cut funding to breakfast and lunch programs. So food insecurity is even higher. And the whole reason why those programs exist is because we recognize that households cannot provide these meals in their homes. So it's done at the school. And it's such a slap in the face now. Like it's just a
Well,
whole.
and you're shouting into the void. I mean, that's the part that I find so infuriating about all this. This is the stuff in these conversations where I want to burn shit to the ground because it's like, okay, I will do whatever the needful is that you deem necessary in order for me to fulfill whatever ridiculous bureaucratic mandate you have that I can get help. But you won't even deign to tell me what that is in this
But
case. Like
but
there's
that is the thing though, because the decisions are made by looking at stats and numbers
yeah,
at the end of the day.
but it's
But
convenient
there's
that
no
they
stats.
won't provide any stats and numbers.
100%.
So
Look
like
what's happening in the US
So
right
this is
currently.
this is usually in the part of the program where I say, who do we need to call? Because you can't call, and Suman probably shouldn't call, but I can call. I don't care. I'll call somebody right now. Like that. That to me is mind blowing. That you're supposed to create an environment where these people feel even acknowledged on their own land. By the way, because we took it, FYI, just in case people weren't following along. And now we're making them jump through all of these ridiculous hoops to not even give it back to them or
100%.
give them any part of living in their own place. Like it's just that's the stuff where I get sort of consumed by sadness and it's where most people I think feel inert, where they stop being
100%.
able to do anything because that seems like an asinine, unfixable problem. Therefore, I can't possibly contribute to that. Therefore, I can't
100%.
Which is,
And I will add one more thing onto this.
I'm not sure I can take any more things,
Yeah,
Meesha.
yeah, yeah. No, I don't want it to make it. When you were talking about it being like really negative before, I think that we have a lot of hope, and that's why I think I have the best job in the world.
Like, love on me with the hope because I can't do this.
Even the statistics that we're using from the food bank are based off of hampers that don't have any fresh foods, that are all like cans of tomatoes and beans. There's no traditional foods in there. Like it's just really like it's just such a bad way of feeding people.
And
To
it's a
add
colonial way.
insult to injury to insult to injury, how are things going with the hunting, indigenous hunting and gathering, and how are we doing with poisoning you know, the water table and
Don't
all that?
even get me started on mining. I
Okay,
don't want to
cool.
talk about it.
Awesome.
I do want to use this opportunity to flip the conversation though into some positivity, because we do have good examples of great projects that build sovereignty and that implement cultural foods and build resilience, or I don't even say build resilience, but support the resilience that's already happening in communities.
Highlight the
Love it.
resilience that exists.
I have the best job in the world.
Okay, I love it.
Love
I
it.
love all of it. So we're going to put all of
So,
that stuff to the side, and now we need
yes,
all
but
the
I'm
good
going to
news.
build a bridge between the negative and the
Okay.
positive
I mean,
here.
all right.
And this is something, Misha, I know you are associated with many organizations
Yeah.
and many coalitions. Now, what kind of advocacy work are you personally or your organizations doing that is helping to move the needle? Can you just throw us some points that you're working on?
Yeah. We're coming up into a territorial election. Our three calls to action are school food. So, our campaign that's happening on World Food Day is, and this is why I'm actually not going to Italy, because I'm dedicated to my community. But we are calling it internally Operation Big Stink. We are going to have a bake sale to raise funds for, well, not to raise funds for one of the community school food programs. We were approached by one of the rural communities. The youth found out that their lunch program was getting canceled, and they wanted to host a bake sale to fund their lunch program, which is bullshit. So I said, we're going to do it, and we're going to do it in front of the legislature, and we're going to shut down the street because we're going to do a big youth march.
Oh, I love it. How much money do you need? How many brownies do you need to sell in order to get a lunch program back? Do you
Yeah,
know?
it's a representation of what's going on. Like,
But how much does one lunch program cost? Do you know what the number is?
oh, what a good question. I actually do have the number. Right now, the federal government, their commitment is only like it only translates to $1.42, I think 42 cents each kid, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Especially in the north.
Yeah, yeah. This is you can't do a whole lot with that.
No, because a head of lettuce is $27. So
You
like,
can't even get a can of beans in dollar store.
I know. Um, so tell us what the number is, just out of curiosity.
Yeah, so actually, so I don't have the cost of what it costs to actually have a lunch program. I can get you those numbers, but like right now, only 4 of the 13 communities receive monthly food boxes from the Yukon Food Bank. So that's also another piece to this. Um, yeah, so non-perishable, nutrient-poor cans and boxes that last a family only a week.
But I mean, let me ask you this, Meesha. If somebody out here in the rest of the world that isn't up in the north sent you a check for 25 grand, is that enough to get a lunch program going in a school? I mean, would that do
I
anything?
don't think so. I mean, it helps. I can't, like, I really don't know what the number is to for like I want to say like it could be like $1 million or something. It's quite expensive, but I mean that's just what we're trying to do. Is like I would if there's ever anybody who's listening to this who is interested in cutting a check, I would talk to the Yukon First Nation Education Directorate.
Okay, say that again.
Yeah, so if anybody is interested in donating funding for school lunch programs in the north, in the Yukon specifically, I would talk to the Yukon First Nation Education Directorate.
And do you know how easy it is to get, I don't know, 5 organizations in Toronto alone to get together and decide? And you can advertise the hell out of this if you want to. Slap your logo all over it. Nobody cares. write a check, send it to these people, and let's get some kids their lunch back. Hey? Like, what's the point in any of us doing any of this stuff if we're all just sitting around having conversations? Like, now's the time that I've hit critical mass my own self, and now I'm going to start banging pots and pans. And there are enough people. I've worked in philanthropy in Toronto. I've been associated with, social justice and community development stuff for long enough to know enough people. And I know some of them are watching this because I'm on it and because we're connected. And some of us are even friends. And those are the people I'm speaking to directly right now. I need you to go do the thing that you do all the time for all these other places and get these kids some lunch, please.
And then like the thing is that once we achieve the goal of maybe getting some money for that, or getting the government to go back to their like, the problem is that the government was funding this before, and now it's been cut through Jordan's principle.
The government don't even care about how many kids are up there who are hungry, let
And it's
alone
not
trying to
the
feed them.
urban lunch program that they've cut, it's the rural one, which
Sure,
really is confusing a lot of people because this is
sure.
where the money is needed the most.
And it's probably the least amount of money that they're spending is the rural program. I would think the urban program costs way more money.
Yeah, maybe it's because of more students. Like we're still trying to figure out like why exactly, but
Sooner
yeah,
you
it is.
know, people, call somebody,
Yeah,
do
I'm
something.
trying to look at more stats right now, and we know that the federal government gave $7.4 million over 3 years for the school food program to Yukon, which is technically they're saying 6,200 students currently use the school food program system up in Yukon. And just to be give perspective, on that same program, 42 million was given to Alberta and 16 million to Saskatchewan,
Because there are squigillionaires in Alberta and
while
Saskatchewan.
7.4 million went to Yukon.
There are special interest groups that are being massaged in places like that. But, you know, for example, this would be a perfect opportunity for, say, grocery companies that have maybe received a bad rap in their reputation because they've been doing things that aren't necessarily above board. This is low hanging fruit, if you'll pardon the pun. Like, would be an easy win, even from a community, capacity building standpoint, a PR standpoint. I don't care what kind of a stunt you want to pull, as long
Yeah,
as
but
kids are getting
so I'm
lunches.
going to give another small data set to
Okay.
compare. So the 7.4 million going to Yukon
Yeah.
is
The Yukon, excuse me.
in the
Yeah.
Yukon
Yeah.
is feeding 6,200 students currently.
Okay.
And there are, according to the latest Stats Canada, there is 48,278 students in school system
Yeah.
in
So
the
that's
Yukon.
not going to cut it.
Yeah, and
A very small amount is getting fed.
But let's go back to the hope part, because I feel like this is we're bearing the lead.
I also want to take a step back though to there are other calls to action, because there's two more that do play a role in this. And one of them is regulatory barriers to accessing like traditional foods. So like, for example, Health Canada wants to get super involved and like make it super complicated for a rural community to get a moose and be able to bring that into the school for youth to learn how to harvest it. But the other piece is that the Yukon government has also made a promise in the past to, I think it's either 5 to 10% of purchasing local food, and right now they are only purchasing 1%. So part of this play is that, yes, as much as we would be like we want commercial grocery stores to help out with this kind of food system, we're really looking for the Yukon government to help our local economy and support our local farmers, so that we could be and using the food that's grown and harvested up here in the school food programs as
And
well.
I totally agree with you. And I think
Fantastic.
these are two prongs of the same fork, because again, we go back to this conversation between aid and development. And what I'm proposing is triaging a crisis that we're in right now by getting somebody, some fat cat somewhere, to write a check to bridge the gap, while you're talking about development, which is sustainable, reliant,
Resiliency.
sovereign
Continue the resiliency.
resiliency, and to have people be able to be autonomous and live their lives with dignity. And I think those two things both need to happen at the same time.
Yeah, we're in emergency. Like, even too, as we're doing this campaign, we've had another organization reach out, say, "Hey, I do after school lunch program. Like, what the hell? Like, why aren't you advocating for us too?" And like, that's just very much it is like we've got this big issue, and it's like we can't tackle it all at the same time. Let's try to get one. Like, let's just get kids their breakfast and lunch program in school, and then once we get kind of that, maybe then we're gonna try to fight for this, like, for more funding for after school programs. Like, it's yeah. I left work early yesterday because I just
Misha.
No,
I,
which is
well,
yeah,
I mean, like, listen, the work that you do, this is frontline work. And I mean, this is the front line of the frontier. Like, there is no more line. That's it. You're at the top of the world doing this work with people who are so deeply disenfranchised and so disoriented that they need people to continue to advocate. But it's also very hard to keep doing that work in the face of such antagonism. So, we have a lot of admiration for what it is that you're doing. Tell
exactly.
us the good stuff.
yeah. So I get this energy from the people that I work with in the communities because they inspire me. So what my job is that I support rural communities in food sovereignty and security initiatives. So whether it's food systems planning, helping them out with their garden, like facilitating cooking classes, like anything regarding food, I pretty much say that I'm free capacity and they can do kind of what they want with me. So that's what my job is.
Love it. Fun. You get to learn a bunch of stuff. You get to be with people. You get to, right? All kinds of things. Knowledge
100%.
sharing.
So tell us a little more about the food. I know you touched a little ahead, but a little more deeper into the food sovereignty programs that's going on, and how is that shaping up?
I think also it's incumbent upon us to remind people what food sovereignty actually means. So if you could start there first, and then tell us a little bit more about what's going on.
Yeah, so food sovereignty is access and their own control over their food system. So especially up here in the north, sovereignty is a big thing because we have such a reliance on the south, and this has led to a lot of problems. Um, but in my work, and I'll talk about Beaver Creek here because they that community really inspired a lot of my work and my interest in this. So with White River First Nation, which is the First Nation it's an unsigned First Nation, which means that traditionally and rightfully, they have rights and sovereignty over their land, but it's not recognized by the federal government. So right now they're fighting the federal government still, to have sovereignty over their land, um, control over their land, and it's not recognized. Um, so this plays a role in like how their funding structure works and like how they make their decisions and stuff like that. So they are currently operating under the Indian Act, which is a totally outdated policy.
Like beyond,
Of course,
it was outdated when it was written.
Calling it an Indian Act is disgusting.
itself is a
Yeah.
problem.
So that's kind of like what they're fighting right now. So it's already hard for them, but the community is also is also located about 500 kilometers away from Whitehorse, and so they're right by like the Elkin border. They are the most most west community in Canada. Their population is about, if you look on Google, it says 100 people. I'm very convinced that there's like 40 people, and most of them are elders, and there's about 7 youth. Like, it's very small. Um, but it's because of where it's located and because of climate change, the road is heavily impacted by permafrost thaw. So anybody who's been to Beaver Creek will talk about the roads because the roads are very much like this, and there's potholes everywhere. So this makes it very difficult on transportation. They don't have a grocery store there. They have like a convenience store that holds a lot of like non-perishable goods, some frozen goods, but it really like has like limited availability of dairy products, and there's not really a whole lot. So um yeah, they're very independent, and they've been left alone a lot. Ever since I got into the community, I noticed that, Yukon government wasn't very, like, nobody was talking about Beaver Creek, and I have brought Beaver Creek up in every conversation and table that I've been at, because the community is really doing it. And yeah, they need to be there. They've been kind of disconnected from a lot of the Yukon. So and part of that has to do with capacity.
Of
The
course.
Yukon's been completely disconnected from the rest of the country.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's disenfranchised population inside of a disenfranchised population. Cool.
Wow.
yeah. They really struggle with like access to sustainable, nutritious food.
What about healthcare and like emergency services and stuff like that? Like how do they deal with that?
Yeah, emergency services. You get medevaced if something happens. They do have a health clinic there, but this is exactly why I started bringing Beaver Creek to the table, because I was talking to somebody from Yukon government here who works in their health department, and they told me that they had canceled a trip for chronic health care to Beaver Creek because there wasn't enough people there. And I will never forget that, and that's why I fight so hard for Beaver Creek, because I think that they need it more than any community, because they have elders and because they are so remote. So
Absolutely.
And also it turns into a metaphor for the whole problem, doesn't it?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, going back into the broader Yukon, if today, for some reason, the Prime Minister of Canada walks up to you and say,
Who's
"You have
from
one wish,"
who's from the Yukon, isn't
uh,
he? Where's Mark Carney from?
I think so. I'm not sure. He's from the territory. I know he was born in a territory, possibly Yukon. But anyways, getting back to the question, if the Prime Minister comes and says, "You have one magic wish, I'm your genie," to improve food security in Yukon, what would be your one magic wish?
At this point, I would say fund school food again, like a universal school food program.
Are we hearing this loud and clear? Fund a universal school food program.
It's not that hard. Canada can do it. I don't. Other countries do it. Like
If Finland could have done this, a universal school food program in the middle of a war, Canada can do it too.
and it's so important. Like I mean, it's and we spend so much money on healthcare and all of these, and there's such a like, especially in the north, like there's lots of overdoses, and there's so many reactionary things that come out of or that are a lack of preventative care. Like food is important for kids and for families to build community, to be healthy, to learn. Like it is a basic need, and it seems crazy that we have to fight for this.
Absolutely.
I want to, before we wrap up though, I want to hear some of those hopeful stories, because I don't think you've had a chance to tell us about some of the successes that you've had. And I don't want this to be all about the doom and the gloom.
I feel sorry because I was I know I when you were talking about the other podcast, I was like, oh, no, there's so much hope here. But
Yeah, yeah, which is great. And we want to hear about the hope. So tell us a little bit about the hope.
yeah, so I do want, like, talking about at least Beaver Creek for sure. I mean, like, there has been funding for the garden, and the garden itself has been such a spotlight to other communities about how it can build resilience and a healthy, like, um build a healthy community around food. It's just like, because the capacity is so small there, like the garden has like the youth have really shown up, and I really, like, the youth are the reason why I do all of my work. Like they actually inspired the Youth Coalition for Food Security North project, because they without them the garden wouldn't be a thing. They came to the table to garden and to maintain the garden while I've been gone. And like through their leadership building, like it just really reflects how essential youth are when we're talking about food systems. Like I know people, youth are the future, but if you give them like, and when I talk about youth engagement, I'm not just like saying like, oh, let's bring them to the table and sit and they can create a policy recommendation that sits on the whatever. Like it's really about giving young people leadership positions so that they can be challenged and really showcase like how essential they are in these systems. And so in the Beaver Creek Food Sovereignty Project, like, we have a whole bunch of produce that now, because the youth were taking care of it, they've had like their own jobs, they've been building responsibility and taking care of each other. We've had youth deliver vegetables and stuff to elders in the community, and now we're planning a community dinner where we're going to be implementing cultural foods as well, to kind of celebrate the stuff. So I think, like, I kind of read this quote today and it really made me think about gardening and colonialism, because sometimes, like, and acts of reconciliation and sovereignty. So this quote was, gardens reveal stories of colonialism, capitalism, and resistance. And I think, like, this is true in both ways, because it's a very, like, colonial practice of, like, I've had, conversations with elders about how they were forced to, like, dig potatoes out of the ground from the church and stuff. However, we've been using the Food Sovereignty Project as a way to promote and support resilience for White River First Nation. So, by sharing the harvest through an open access and through community dinners, we've been incorporating traditional foods and building beauty and community around food as an act of reconciliation. And it's just a way of, like, you know what, if the government isn't going to help, or if the food, like, the system is so flawed that it can't help, then by localizing a food system and giving people the power back to the people to have control over their own food systems, like, has been a dignifying experience. And I think, just especially with youth, like, it's so important to get youth like, excited about being a part of their community through food.
That's amazing.
100%.
It's amazing. Okay, so the question that I ask people, and I know that's just one of a whole bunch of other things that you're doing, and it's like pushing water uphill, but you really are making a difference, and these kids are creating opportunities for themselves, and there are opportunities being created for them to exercise their leadership skills and learn critical thinking skills and all of these things that are incredibly vital so that they can self-determine as they get older, right? So it's incredibly important. I mean, they talk about capacity building. This is it. This is what capacity building looks like. So congratulations to all of you, because it sounds like you're doing a whole lot of really badass stuff up there, and hopefully we can get some people down here to help you out in some capacity or another. Um, tell me now what your best case scenario is. Like, again, to Suman's point earlier, we're waving a magic wand, you're pie in the sky, whatever euphemism you want to use about, abject optimism. Now it's insert abject optimism here. Meesha, what would you say? What's your best case scenario?
Yeah, I just can't stop thinking about having a universal lunch program. I think that's it. If there's another piece too, like, the Youth Coalition for Food Security North project is depleting its financial resources, and that would also be really great to get funded, because we're running out of options, and it's been such a beautiful project that I just really like to see, like, and in that piece, and because I'm wearing multiple hats, so I'm always speaking to different things, and I never know which one to prioritize. But that one, like, we offer micro grants to youth across the north, and it's a very bottom up approach, and because we believe that youth are the experts in their communities, we need help with that. We need help with, like, the management funds for our small management team. Like, I think that through both of my work, like, if I can just continue to provide a space for youth to feel excited about participating in food, and feeling inspired to run their own projects in their communities, because each territory is different, each community is different. I can't be an expert in everything. Um, Being able to support that would be, like, my dream, I think. But
Well, listen,
Fantastic.
I mean, if there's anything that this podcast can do to help that and help any of the other initiatives that we've been looking for, that's what we're hoping to have happen as an outcome
Absolutely. And
of
have
this
this
work.
conversation.
Yeah,
And have these conversations, let people know what's happening around the world
yeah.
when it comes to food security.
And in their own country, right?
Absolutely.
And just please understand that this is whatever bad thing is happening in a place like Toronto or Montreal or Vancouver, it's exponentially worse the further north you get, and that's hard to wrap your brain around. But it's the truth, and the more we talk about this stuff, the faster hopefully we can get the right eyes on it. Stay in the light, Meesha. You're doing incredibly good work with It sounds like some pretty special people, and we're really pleased that you were able to come and join us and tell us even a little bit about what you're doing up there.
And hopefully someday we will be there to see you and your work in action.
Oh, that would be
I
great.
will gladly allow you to be, or
I want to be a sourdough.
I want, yeah, that's what I was gonna get
I
to.
don't know if I want to be there in the winter,
Oh, I
but
don't care, man. I'll go. I want to be a sourdough.
I'll be a raisin if I go in the winter. But sourdough, it's okay. I like sourdoughs.
Take great care, Meesha. Thank you very much.
It's a
for
pleasure.
everything.
Thank you, Meesha.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.